In this lesson, we're going to learn what it means when we compare two figures to figure out if they are similar and or congruent. So let's go ahead and define what it means when two shapes are similar. So similar figures, they have the same shape and equal angles. So already here we see we have two figures that are the same shape. But let's go ahead and show how the angles are similar. And notice here we have our triangle ABC, so this triangle here, and this symbol, that squiggly line, that means similar. We're saying it's similar to triangle DEF. So let's go ahead and show how that is true. So let's go ahead and start with our angles. Let's start with angle B, and we're going to say it's a right angle. And to determine what angle here, you might be able to visually see, but we have a clue in our sentence here. So the B here, it falls in the middle. It's also going to match up with whichever letter falls in the middle over here. So we know angle B is the same as angle E. So we can go ahead and show that angle E is also a right angle. Now let's move on to angle A. I'll represent it with one line. And using that same pattern, we know that angle A is similar to angle D. So we can go ahead and show that these two angles are equal. And moving on to our last angle, C, which we'll represent with two angle lines. We know that C, since it appeared last here, will match up with the angle here. So angle C is equal to angle F. And so we can show that these two figures, since the angles measure the same, we know that they are similar. So now let's go ahead and discuss what does it mean when we have congruent shapes. So already we see our new triangles, GHI and also JKL. And we have our new symbol here, and we see right there we have the same squiggly line we had in similar shapes, and then also we have an equal sign under it. So we know that for something to be congruent, it has to be similar, but also it needs to be equal. So let's talk about what that means. So for a figure to be congruent with another figure, we know that they have to be the same shape, and here we see that they are the same shape. They also have to have equal side lengths and equal angles. So let's go ahead and show how these are the same with our equal sides and our equal angles. So let's start with our angles. We'll start with angle H. We'll say it's a right angle. And we know angle H occurs in the center here, so it's congruent with angle K over here. So let's go ahead and draw in that angle K is also a right angle. And now let's move on to angle G. So we'll say angle G here, we'll draw it with one line and figure out what it's congruent with. So it's first in the order, so now that means it will be similar or equal to J. So let's go ahead and draw in J. And lastly, let's go on to shape I, or angle I, and we'll draw it in with two lines, and we know that I will be equal to L. So let's show that L and I are equal. Okay, now let's talk about the sides. So we'll go opposite of the angle. So starting with angle H, the side opposite, we'll draw it with one line. And we know that H is equal to K. So opposite of K, we'll draw one line. Now let's move on to angle G. Opposite, we'll draw two lines. And then G is congruent with J. So opposite of J, we'll draw our 2 lines. And lastly, let's move on to angle I. And the line opposite will be here. We'll represent that with 3 lines. We know I is equal to L, so finding L on our other triangle, finding the line opposite, we'll draw on those 3 lines. So now we can show that these two shapes are congruent and they are also similar.